Hi, I'm Whack.
Hi, and I'm Pat, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Orbit, where we're going to try to take all of the week's news of Rocket Pool and consolidate it to about 30 minutes. And you also get Whack's analysis, too. And we've got a full show again, Whack. Where's this podcast find you today?
I'm in England. I'm actually in my parents' house where I spent most of my childhood, and we're flying back to the US on Monday, and I'll be back recording regular high quality episodes on Tuesday because I've had some really bad episodes recently. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was reading comments. Someone's like, man, there was some real bad mic noise, like, rubbing the mic, and don't wear your headphones. You'll
Yeah.
lose your hearing if you do it.
Yeah, the problem is like it's either record and the like sadly acknowledge the quality is bad, or just not record. And I feel like the community would miss out more if I didn't record than having like some glitchy audio here and there and it's kind of echoey sound and like not clear sound quality. But from Tuesday we'll be back to my regular setup, so I'll have my
Great.
camera, my microphone, everything will be better hopefully.
Yeah, you'll be probably really excited too to get back into the routine. And I know the community really loves your show, and I've watched
Thank
it
you.
every episode since you've been gone. So we appreciate
Yeah.
you, because I know traveling and trying to put out a content at the same time, and that's a lot to balance. And you've been pretty good about putting out episodes, even though you're traveling between the United Kingdom and Berlin
Yeah.
and Poland, and
Yeah, it's been a
you know
busy
you
trip,
do.
but I'm excited to go back home now. So, yeah.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, you miss home. So
Mhm.
the first thing we're going to talk about, Whack, is some stats. Um,
Yeah,
and let's take a look at deposits this week. Uh, we've got we had a nice deposit day on September 6th, 3,100, but we've been like just triple digits on the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
mm,
And the deposit pool, I think, it's just below 18,000. So there's a couple hundred ETH. We're at 17,776 ETH. So it's 98% or 99% full.
yeah,
And we've had some bond reductions. Well, before we get, let's talk about Marcobarko. He's been It looks like he's been withdrawing, and what's he doing here? As you can see, he's been quite
yeah.
busy
So,
this week.
yeah, so when it says that the ETH has been distributed from the mini pool, that means that, and especially when it's saying there's 32 points something ETH that's been distributed, that means that ETH is basically all of it is leaving staking, and
Mhm.
that mini pool is going to close down. So it's kind of hard to know which mini pools are active and which ones are not active. It's like it was a whole faff a few weeks ago to kind of like add it all up and figure out which ones are active or not. And
Mhm.
I think that now we're in a position where we can do that. But this means that Marcobarko is basically closing down some of his validators, and people initially like kind of panicked, like, whoa, Marco's like the biggest node operator on Rocket Pool. If he's closing down his validators, like what's going on here? But I think the community consensus basically was that for this particular node, he is bond reducing, and with the bond reduction that he's doing, he's be starting a new node. So, Marco hasn't come out and said this outright, but with all his marriage nodes that he has, it seems like he kind of goes to 300 validators on each one, and this node
Mhm.
that is having a bond reduction taking place, 150 of those validators of 300 were kind of closing down, and it's taking out some RPL. And it looks like what will happen is, those will be turned into LEB8s, which means he will then have 300 validators again. And then the ETH that's being distributed that we just saw will then go to a new node, and then those will be used to make potentially 300 more LEB8s. So
So,
right now on the screen, you can see that the node has had like RPL leaving, like 102,000 RPL, and if you can kind of follow where that goes, it looks like it's just sitting in this address here with around 110,000 RPL, and yeah, like if you look there, it says 8,300 RPL. So it looks like, this particular batch of RPL, I think that's what, people are keeping an eye on and seeing where is that going to go. And if it goes to a new a new node that ends up having about 300 validators, then you'll know that, this is a new Marco node that's spun up pretty much. But we'll see what's happening. So it's been 2 days and 10 hours since this RPL was withdrawn and like put onto this address. I think a few people will be watching where that goes next.
When you see on the first slide here with the 32.8452 ETH has been distributed from the mini pool and he's closing those down, is he withdrawing from the beacon queue? Is he going through the beacon queue withdrawal queue and then redeploying?
Right? Yeah, so there's no withdrawal queue. So yeah, that's kind of what's happening. So
I mean, you got to wait like 5 days if you would. It takes about like 3 or 5 days, doesn't it? If you're going to withdraw your validator. Yeah.
Because you've got to get.
So is that what he's doing? He's totally withdrawing.
Yeah, so he's totally withdrawing all that ETH from that node and then sending it to a new node that he'll spin up. Because there's no way to kind of like divide your node into two, an existing node, which is one of the problems that Thomas is having as well. Because he had 1,000 or so, like 900 to 1,000 validators on his node, and then the question was like, will he divide that and then spin up a new node, or will he just like take that to 2,000 after bond reductions? And it seems like I think Thomas might be going through a similar process to this in the coming days, and we'll just have to acknowledge, right? Like this is whale stuff that's beyond the majority of us, but they'll be optimizing their nodes and their setups and making sure that everything's working properly. But this is the wallet that you have on screen now. This is the kind of thing that people will be paying attention to seeing where that RPL will be going, to get an idea what happens next with this.
Yeah, and it's great when these whales do bond reduce, because they're tearing through the deposit pool and creating all this new rETH, and that's good for the protocol. One other thing that's happened this week is the rETH premium is gone. We're now I just pulled up the LSD price command on Discord, and it's rETH is at a 0.025% discount. So that premium's gone. It's now if you're a small guy and you're looking to just buy a couple rETH, you can go around your secondary markets and you don't have to worry about overpaying.
No, exactly. Yeah. So you're getting market rates pretty much on the secondary market right there, and on you can just go straight to the deposit pool and just mint your rETH right from there. It's got capacity of a couple of hundred, ETH worth at the moment. It's likely that will get filled in the next couple of days, and then the discount will slowly start creeping up again as there's demand for rETH or there isn't demand for rETH. But I think the last time, or the time before that actually, where we had a premium and then it was all kind of eaten away, it took a few weeks to develop that good premium again. So it might be that it kind of coincides with the next rewards period, where there'll be a bit of a premium just for people who are high collateral and they want to bond reduce. They'll end up waiting for the new period so they don't miss out on RPL rewards. However, the queue's getting shorter every day. We're like down to under 20 days now, so that definitely gives people like some breathing room for their bond reductions and stuff. But RPL, the rETH is still growing, and more people are still staking Rocket Pool, so that's really exciting.
Yeah, awesome. Another exciting thing that happened just a couple days ago was the AAVE Rocket Pool RPL pool has doubled again. We just covered this the last week's show. We went from 210,000 capacity to 420,000, and now it's just doubled again to 840,000. The borrowing cap has remained the same. It's still at 160,000. The APY, if you were to deposit RPL for supply, it would be 0.46%, and the APY to borrow is at 2.49%. So those are good rates to borrow, considering if you're looking to spin up a mini pool, or you don't have enough, say you're under collateralized, you don't want to be exposed to RPL, you could borrow this, and there's a spread there because it's about 8% rewards is the rate. You borrow at 2.5%, It's about a 5.5% difference. But anyways, Wack, it's good to see the cap is. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of demand here for RPL supply. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that's happened here is the supply has grown so quickly, and I think even the guys at AAVE were kind of maybe. I mean, I'm just kind of like projecting, trying to like think about what they might be thinking, and I think that this has grown faster than they expected. Especially, the APY is so low at 0.46%. I think one of the things to know is that there's so much RPL sitting on the sidelines that people have that they're not using because they're already at high collateral percentages. It's just sat there. They're doing nothing with it. So they're wondering, why not just get 0.5% instead of getting zero. Throw in AAVE, which is one of the most battle tested, long lasting contracts and the protocols out there. It's like relatively low risk compared to like some of the newer things. It just kind of makes sense to just throw it in there and just earn a little bit of rewards on top. It's going to be interesting to see how long it takes us to get to 840,000. The main number that we need to be looking at is like the borrowed amount. Once that gets closer to like 130 or 140,000 of the 160,000 cap, that's when the APY rates will start going up, and that's when AAVE will have to make a decision about whether or not they're going to increase the borrow cap. There's going to be some fun dynamics to play here, I think, that we'll see over the next month.
Yeah, that's good to see. And this kind of ties into, we'll skip ahead to NodeSet had a really exciting announcement this week. Now, they've been working, a couple guys from Rockapool, who are Wanderer and Nick, I believe.
Yeah.
They've had their heads down working on NodeSet for several months now. They just had announced. They just had an announcement this week to, hey, if you want to get whitelisted and you want to sign up as a node operator, hey, let us know. So they're looking to launch probably soon. Probably, are we thinking first quarter next year, maybe, right? And we were talking off air how there's a lot of RPL sitting idle in people's wallets, not earning anything, that they might be really interested in a node depositing RPL. So for our listeners, explain to our listeners how NodeSet, the mechanics will work.
Okay, yeah. So let's think of it as two different things, right? Like there'll be an ETH side and an RPL side. So if you deposit ETH, you will get a token called XRETH back. And if you deposit RPL, you will get a token called XRPL back. And these will be then wrapped rETH kind of thing and wrapped RPL. Now, when a person buys rETH for their ETH on through the deposit pool, what they're doing is they're paying like a 14% commission on that for the person to run their validator on their behalf. So your rewards are 14% less than solo staking. Now, when it comes to NodeSet, what will happen is that we will when it comes to NodeSet, what will happen is that ETH will go into the NodeSet pool, and from the NodeSet pool, it will be sent to an existing Rocket Pool node operator who will be earning that commission from the rETH holders, right? So they'll be earning 14, well, actually more than 14% more than the solo staker, because they're getting that from, the 24 ETH of commission. So it's up to 40% more than the node operator. NodeSet will take that 40% and skim it off the top, the 40% extra rewards, and the 100% of the solo staking rewards will go to the person who deposits their ETH into their pool. So that's how they're going to give outsized rewards for people depositing ETH into NodeSet. Now, the amount that they skim off the top to bring it in line with solo staking, that will be divided out between people who are the node operators. There'll be existing Rocket Pool node operators, and then also, like, I'm guessing the NodeSet protocol, although we don't know how the numbers are going to work out at this point. When it comes to XRPL, again, with that, the numbers are kind of like a little bit fuzzy as well at the moment. But if you take the idea that you're getting 8% on your RPL staking as a node operator through Rocket Pool, what might happen is if you deposit that RPL into NodeSet, and then they send it to validators, that 8%, it might be that you get 4 or 5 of that percent, and then what the other remaining amount will be shared between NodeSet and the person running the validator. So the person running the validator is going to be getting rewards for minimal extra work. NodeSet will be getting some, I guess, for their potential token holders or whatever in the future. And then with the people who are depositing into NodeSet, they'll be getting much more reward than they'll be getting anywhere else. So it's like a really nice system. There are a couple of issues, I think, that, we'll have to see how it works out. Like, the idea will be, why would someone mint rETH instead of just depositing into NodeSet instead? Because you'll be getting more reward. And I think some of the things that, the arguments that might persist is that, rETH will have Lindy, which means, it's been going for a lot longer. The contracts are immutable. They have much higher TVL, the contracts are audited in a certain way. There's just a lot more reputation about it. So I think that that's something that people will be attracted to. And also NodeSet, with a new protocol, new project. So it won't be battle tested in the same way that Rocket Pool is. So there'll be some issues. I think there'll be some teething problems potentially in the beginning, just balancing deposits of RPL versus deposits of ETH. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think it's going to help bring on thousands of validators onto Rocket Pool. And I think Rocket Pool existing node operators are going to absolutely love it because they'll be getting extra rewards for doing very little extra work.
Yeah, it's a nice, I think, one of the scaling solutions for Rocket Pool. You build on top of it and use the base layer of Rocket Pool to create more rETH, use some of this RPL that's sitting idle in people's wallets. We are looking at the AAVE pools paying 0.46%. Most say you got 4.6%. I'm just making this number up. I have no idea what they're going to do. That's 10x better return on your RPL that's just sitting there, not earning anything. So this is exciting. I'm really glad. I'm happy for those guys. They've been working really hard. We'll see. Ken mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago that they're going to monitor. I think they're going to be making some kind of announcement in November. They're going to be talking about things. So we'll look forward to that. But good news. They keep moving, inching the ball closer to launch. So I can't wait till the day when they actually do. See how that works out. Okay, our next item. Job he dropped in the Discord quick, and he said, quick breaking of silence. My understanding is we've settled on making LEB4s part of Saturn and megapools, which does in fact mean they require force exits. And there's kind of a back and forth here. He makes it clear that LEB4s will not be here before force exits. So force exits, as I understand it, WAC, there's an EIP that's expected to go through with the next Ethereum Denkun upgrade that will allow for forced exits. And once that's part of the Ethereum base protocol, these things like LEB4s can be used. But it's do you have any? I see you're in part of this discussion. Real quick. So any thoughts?
Yes, I was talking to Patches and a couple of others about what megapools will look like and how they'll fit with or without LEB4s. And the idea of megapools, of course, is you'll have curved collateral, and you might be able to have access to more collateral than with the LB8, provided you have a certain number of validators, because they'll be the ones that are acting as collateral. LEB4s, as an idea, the way that we're talking about it here, would just be like one person for ETH. They come along and they spin up one validator, and that's a 4 ETH validator. So there's a slight nuance there in what the discussion is. Forced exits are likely going to be in the Electra upgrade, which will be the one after the upcoming upgrade. So it might be in April or May next year, a rough projection. So that's kind of what's happening there. But I think what Joe kind of is trying to say is that the idea of megapools and the idea of LEB4s will be coming in Saturn upgrade at that time. And for LEB4s as a standalone thing, that's what we'll need forced exits for. However, it might be that mini pools megapools will come without that necessarily. Like it'll come with its own bonding stuff. So that is my understanding of it. If I'm wrong, hopefully someone will correct me. But the nice thing is that we're just getting some clarity here about what the next upgrades are going to look like. Of course, we talked about that on last week's episode with Langus kind of giving a good idea of what's coming in the next two upgrades. When I think we'll get one of them hopefully before the end of the year, maybe in December, depending on when the next Ethereum upgrade happens, and then hopefully one about 6 months after that. Although there's no timelines right now, there's no official dates or anything right now. It's just speculation, and what's really great is there's some really good stuff coming. So that was nice of Joe to kind of just explain this like slight differences in what those upgrades are going to look like. But it's really exciting. There's some really, really big stuff happening for Rocket Pool in the coming months.
So I was wrong. So the Force exits, they're not expected to go in the next Ethereum upgrade?
They're not in the coming upgrade. So what's happening is you might be mistaking it for 4788, I think, which is the one that will let the consensus and execution layers communicate with each other, and that's the one that will excuse me. That's the one that will like reduce some of the ODAO duties. And for on the Rocket Pool side, what will happen is we're going to be getting on-chain voting and on-chain governance instead of the snapshot voting that we're having now. So that's incredibly important because that is one of the main centralizing vectors that is left after removing some ODAO power and all the OJAR charter, I guess, getting that set up. So it's going to be really interesting to see how all that fits together and like the wonderful stuff that's coming for Ethereum and Rocket Pool.
So we're probably looking at a time frame of these two next upgrades within the next 12 months. Is fair?
Oh, yeah, I think 12 months is like way beyond like anyone's realistic expectations. Like the worst case scenario, the best case scenario for 4844, which is like proto dank sharding on the Ethereum mainnet and Houston here is probably like the end of the year, and then 6 months after that, so probably like June, maybe July at the latest, we should have Electra on the Ethereum side and Saturn on the Rocket Pool side kind of coming at that point. So
awesome.
It's really good.
Great. Yeah, it is great.
Yeah.
Real quick, Build on Base. Rocket Pool is excited to be bringing our ETH over to Build on Base, which is Base. Coinbase is L2. That's exciting. Just more our ETH where you need it, right, Wack?
Yeah, so this is really exciting because Coinbase is layer 2, is the fastest growing layer 2 since its launch. It's gobbling up TVL. People are using it. A lot of people are using it because of friend tech, but also just because it's easy to use. It's like they've had a really great product launch. They had one slight hiccup this week, but other than that, it's just been smooth sailing. Something really amazing that was great to see with this announcement was, Base have onboarded 8 tokens through their native bridge, and that's including like ETH and USDC and a couple of others. But 2 of those 8 are RPL and rETH, which is absolutely amazing because it's the only LST that they've got going across there. And RPL, of course, is just like a regular ERC20 token. So Coinbase have really supported Rocket Pool in the previous months, and it's really great to see that this is some of the fruit of that relationship that's been building over the last year plus.
And I think if I recall, they got basically a one-click transfer, as you see on this tweet, where if you're on Coinbase, you want to send it over to Base. I think it's like 10 cents they're charging. It's pennies to send it. I heard that on another show. I haven't actually checked it out myself. Have you experienced it?
Yeah, when I bridged some ETH from Ethereum to Base, I think it cost me a couple of dollars. It's just the same as sending it across to Arbitrum or ZK Sync Era or Optimism or any of those chains, that have the bridges. Once you're actually on Base, that's when things get really fun to play around with, and you get fees that are in the 10-cent range. Of course, after 48, 40.
4844.
Yeah, the next prototype sharding, with that, that'll come down about 10x, maybe even more. So that's when you start getting like sub-cent transaction
Yeah.
fees, and it'll open up like LSTs and DeFi to a whole new bunch of people who can come in there and play with $10 or play with $20 in a way that you just can't with Ethereum. So I'm really excited about that.
Okay. Hey, you want to talk about Lido? We got a few tweets here. Lidon't is a hashtag going around. Our friend Sleety put together this little animation, which is pretty cool. And then Jasper put out a nice long tweet talking about DAO governance. And then you had another tweet here by Ryan Berkman's, which I think you covered on your show. Mm-hmm. And so we haven't really talked too much about Lido. It seems to me, Whack, that Lido's not inherently evil, but the problem is having such exposure of the network to one. Basically, in this case, I think the real risk comes in the DAO, and they as Jasper, and you can go into details on the technical side of this, but it seems that the DAO of Lido, if Lido became so dominant, it could be almost like a governance for Ethereum itself. And we know that the Lido token is the delegation for voting is really highly concentrated on Lido. So just a handful of wallets. When they decide, hey, do you want to, should we limit ourselves to 22%? And 98% of the delegated votes was no. It was just like 3 or 4 of those wallets made up 51% of the vote. Mm-hmm. And because then I saw a breakdown, I don't have it with me here, but you've probably seen it where there was, 98% and 2% was one pie. But then if you looked at the actual amount of people who voted, it was more like 60-40, in favor, not 98. So I just feel that, being so, obviously I'm biased. I got bags in Rocket Pool, but I feel like the folks in Rocket Pool are really Ethereum aligned. Mm-hmm. And the folks in Lido, they aren't. They're running validators on other ecosystems. There's a lot of VC money in there. It's not to say VCs are bad, but if I had to chime in, I just think that I just don't see them as Ethereum aligned, and it concerns me that it seems my brief time in crypto, you got these edge cases that, this could happen or that could happen. And a lot of times those things do happen. As unlikely that some things tend to be, you got to worry, like, what happens if, such and such a thing happened? Well, it could. And it does, it could be an existential threat, or at least it could be a big deal. So what do you think?
Yeah, this whole push started in the last few weeks, where a couple of developers with Ethereum were starting to say that this is not good. That Lido's getting to 33%, getting over 33% potentially in the near future, because it's growing faster than other staking services, right? It's not necessarily like Rocket Pool at the moment in terms of percentage gains week by week, but in real terms, it's growing like a monstrous amount. It's not slowing down, and people are worried. So one of the things that was really interesting was there was a separate discussion happening about MakerDAO and Rye, and Vitalik kind of popped into the Reflexer forum and was talking about how it might be worth it to accept LSTs for Rye now, and kind of bridge a gap between a maker and a purely governance-free stablecoin. And in that message of his, he wrote something like not Lido, right? So not Lido, you accept minority stake LSTs, but not Lido. And that one line just kind of really ignited the fire again, and got a whole bunch of people discussing it over the last week. And there's been a whole lot of talk back and forth. There've been people who've gotten involved on the Lido side, like Seraphim and Banteg and others. And then there's a whole lot of people anti-Lido, I guess, kind of position. Like, not necessarily like, against Lido, but just saying like, this is what's happening is not good, and kind of taking that position. And that's, of course, Jasper is one of those people. I've made a couple of comments, but not anywhere near that extent as Jasper's been doing. And then there's a whole bunch of people that are outside of the Rocket Pool community as well, like Ryan Beckerman's here and others who kind of like chimed in as well. And what's happening is, there's a whole movement going on right now of this idea of not Lido. And, it's been covered on Bankless recently, it's been covered on Daily Grey recently, this idea. And I think it's reaching like a fever pitch. Now, what happens next is really interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see. Whenever this has happened in the past, where there's like been a panic about Lido, sadly, not much has happened, and their share hasn't, like, it's still been growing, But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that, like, with Vitalik saying not Lido, with other like really well respected people saying not Lido, hopefully, people will start choosing someone other than Lido. I kind of understand Anthony Sisano's perspective, saying like, you need to build better alternatives to have not Lido. Sadly, the only one that we have right now is Rocket Pool, and we are limited in all these different ways. It might be a year before we're in a position where we can really like ramp up our growth and like go from like 2% of stake on 5% of LSTs or whatever it is to 15% of stake or 20% of stake, like whatever. Like, it's going to take a long time for that to happen. We need other services to step up, but this is definitely like a huge conversation that's like really reaching a crescendo now, and I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in the days and weeks to come.
Yeah, I mean, I sympathize too with that, because I like the idea of competition and, well, build a better product, and that's good. But in reality, though, there's power that comes with incumbency. And if I just make an example, I mean, Walmart was the dominant retailer for decades. Now Amazon is really challenging them hard, but it took decades to build Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these big albatrosses are not easy to move. And it's easy to just say, well, just build a better product. There's a lot of better products out there that never made it because they just got swallowed up.
Yep.
So I think there's more nuance to just saying, well, just got to build a better competitive staking protocol and everything will be fine. I think there's more to it than that. And, when guys like Vitalik kind of chime in, now he dropped one little comment, but he's very careful with his words too, right? He's not going to, I just, on a separate topic, MakerDAO, Rune, as I'm sure you've heard, he's talking about move in as the end game, move into like a Solana based protocol or L1, and just hours after that, Vitalik he sold all his Maker. He didn't say anything, but he sent in a message that he doesn't agree.
Yep.
And then guys like Danny Ryan, they've chimed in about, hey, this is a concern about having too much in one basket. So I hope this discussion continues. I guess I'd like it more, the folks at Lido to have a little more, they hand wave a lot of this stuff off. Oh, yeah. And I guess I'd like to have them more engaged, right? Not every protocol is perfect. Everyone's trying to make their thing better. And I'd like to see more of that from Lido to say, hey, like, this might be a concern, and maybe we got some unique ways to address it. And hopefully we'll get there.
I hope so too. Okay,
finally, the last item for today is there's been an ongoing forum discussion on RPIP4, which is the when it was written, there's talk about, did it mean that you could vote if you had over 10% RPL collateral, between 10% and 150, or was it 0% to 150? And this has been going back and forth. What do you think, Wack? Do you have any thoughts or anything to report on this?
So, this was a discussion that kind of came up. It was kind of seen as the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law kind of discussion. So what happened is, when there was contract changes that happened on the Rocket Pool side with the previous upgrade, and there was a mistake made, and there was a bug, which meant that anyone who had RPL collateral on Node, whether that was collateralized or under collateralized, was able to vote on snapshot voting, and their vote counted. However, the idea was that it should have been 10% to 150%, which is the same range where you get rewards for, like, your staking. So
Right.
I think it was in Atlas that was kind of patched up and fixed up. And now the idea is, in RPIP 4, what was the original intention, right? Like, where was the vote supposed to happen? One of the reasons why this came up was because so many of our node operators are currently under collateralized, and because of that, they're kind of disenfranchised from voting. Then they're not allowed to vote.
I think it's about a third, right?
Yeah,
Like the last
a
week we
third
looked
of
at about 30%.
validators. Yeah, a third of validators were under collateral. So that's a whole lot of RPL, voting power that's not being used. So then this whole discussion was kind of went back and forth, talking about 56 messages here, 55 replies, talking about whether or not we should have people like change the voting idea. So if those who are from 0 to 150%, sorry, can vote on snapshot votes going forward. There are a couple of people like here, Waldorf said, I can argue it both ways. And then there was, ideas going back and forth. And eventually the idea was, as you delve into the RPIP 4, which was kind of like the foundational text of this stuff, let's see what we can kind of pull out of there and what was the intention of that RPIP to begin with. And the idea was, let's this is the great place to stop. Like, what does the vote say, right? So here it says, agree that it unambiguously allows 0 to 150%. Mostly agree. It's mostly clear that 0 to 150%, and then disagree. So you can see that the majority of the people who voted here, nearly 70%. Said that they think it should be 0 to 150%, and then the others were saying that no, it should be 10 to 150%. Well, things got really interesting here coming up when Langers came into the forum and said that our intention basically was that it should be 10 to 150%, and this is where we've always stood, and this is what the community kind of knew it to be, and this is what people were acting on, and this is what we wanted to do. And then that sparked a whole new wave of discussion between Langers, Valve, Noshua, people who are really serious about governance, who spend a whole lot of time thinking through these things and like trying to get ideas of what's going on. And then Dave got involved as well, talking about like what's where we stand and what's going on, and there was like a whole lot of there's Dave right there,
Yep.
and trying to give context around the original stuff. So yeah, here's Noshua saying, "Are you saying the issue was introduced with Redstone?" So that's where the bug appeared potentially, and this whole discussion was like quite passionate, quite like heated, I guess, if you can describe it as heated on the forum, but there were a whole lot of opinions back and forth. Patches like made a couple of comments that I really loved, talking about how we might need to address this in one way or another, and how we might have to kind of go back to figuring out what the original intention of RPIP 4 was and what we need to vote on that. Like this, actually, I haven't like caught up with this part that you're looking at right now on the screen, so I can't really say too much about that. Can you just press see results and see what happens here? Yeah, and that's what I was expecting. Like have two linked votes to establish what prior strategy the PDAO will adapt. That makes sense. But yeah, this is a huge discussion that's happened. Like it was a topic that wasn't actually, it didn't seem that huge, you know what I mean, until this week when it kind of really blew up, and there's a whole lot going on in here that I would leave for our listeners and viewers to unpack themselves. But it's definitely a really interesting.
Should we expect a vote at some point, you think?
Yeah, it looks like what's going to happen is there'll be two votes. One will be for people who are collateralized between 0 to 150%. Sorry, and then another one between 10 and 150%, just so you get both of those groups and get their votes tallied up and see how the votes align.
Yeah.
And then people will be able to kind of make a position going forward. Yeah, that's where I leave it right now.
Stay tuned.
15 messages here that I haven't been able to catch up with yet. So I will leave it for our viewers and listeners to catch up with that. But it looks like that'll be going to snapshot vote at some point, like in the next month or so, maybe a little bit sooner or somewhere around there. So get your voting delegate set up because they'll be going to vote soon.
Do you happen to be a voting delegate, WAC? Can people
Yeah,
delegate
people
to you?
delegate their vote to me. I'm actually one of the biggest at the moment. I
Yeah.
think I have like a really big vote power. Like people have assigned that to me. I'm quite open with the way that I vote, and of course if I vote in a way that my delegatees, the people who delegate to me, if they're not happy with that, then they can always go and vote themselves as well. So
Sure.
that is really important. That they can kind of override my vote. But I'm always happy to listen to people who have delegated their votes to me. I'll drop a message once in a while in Discord, saying, hey, if you want to vote to me, like this is how you do it. But it's really like a huge honor that so many people trust me with their vote, and I think I'm doing a good job. Like I've voted every vote so far. I try to be engaged and aware of what's being voted on. So yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
that wraps up our 20th episode, WAC, of the Weekly Orbit. It just blew by so quickly. Of course, none of this has been financial advice, tax advice. Stay tuned for our show next week. And WAC, have a safe travel back to the United States from your parents' your old bedroom and your parents' house.
No, I'm not actually in the bedroom. I'm in the second living room here. So
Okay.
it's so the kids are asleep upstairs, so I can't really do that. So but I'm only here for another day. So tomorrow's my last day, and then I'll be leaving on Monday. So it's been a really nice trip, but I'm ready to go home.
Yeah, it's been a while. So we'll have safe travels, and we'll see you everybody next week.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.